Hello there, friends, true believers, and newcomers alike. Superfly Comics Guy here, and what's this? Two Omnis. Yup, it's been a while since we've had a double dose of Omni on the channel, so I figured today we'd do that, because we're going to be diving through the covers, the spines, the contents, the build quality, and flip-throughs of the Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman Omnibuses Volumes 1 and 2. So, if you like the video at any point, you know what to do, and feel free to leave your thoughts below as well. But yeah, we'll be diving through this highly celebrated run on Marvel's First Family. Many view it as their favorite run on the group, so I'm here to find out just how true that is. So why don't you come join me? Alright, so starting off nice and simple, let's take a look at the covers. Here we have the variant cover for Volume 1 and the standard cover for Volume 2. I would have preferred to have the standard cover for Volume 1 as well, but it wasn't available at the time when I was looking for it. Let's have a look at the spines together. Don't usually get two spines at once, but, you know, thought I'd treat you guys today. There you go. Pretty nice. Unfortunately, they don't line up exactly, so that might tick some people off, but what can you do, right? And the backs. No cover gallery, just some interesting designs. Volume 1 collects Dark Reign Fantastic Four 1 through 5, Fantastic Four 570 through 588, FF 1 through 5, and material from Dark Reign The Cabal one shot. And Volume 2 collects FF 6 through 23, Fantastic Four 600 through 611, and 605.1. Both Omnis coming in at a cover price of $100 US, $125 Canadian. But let's flip these back over and take a look under the dust jacket. You reckon I can snap away two covers at once? I don't know. Let's see. Might take some focus, but bam! You bet your butt cheeks we can snap away two covers at once. I mean, I think I've earned a like on the video just for that, right, guys? But anyway, pretty straightforward situation we got here. Under the dust jacket, we got the standard covers. On the front for both Omnis. Yeah, I wish I could have gotten that one, but you know what? It's under the dust jacket, so I'm okay with having it there. And then on the back, we have the variant cover for each respective omnibus. There's the variant for Volume 1 and the variant for Volume 2. Glad I was able to get the standard cover for Volume 2, because man, I'm not a fan of this artwork in the slightest. But I'll touch on that a bit later. And for those curious, might as well show you the spines here. Much more uniform looking than the dust jacket, thankfully. Volume 2 a little bit thicker, but as I said, we'll touch on that a bit later. For now, let's start diving through the contents. Okay, so starting with Volume 1. So those who know me closely will know that I'm not really the biggest Fantastic Four fan. I know a little bit about them. I know the general stuff, the basics. And I appreciate them when they appear in like other stories as like supplementary characters, but on their own, I don't know, I was never really drawn to them. But the hype and the praise for this particular series by Jonathan Hickman convinced me to give them a shot here. So a quick rundown for anybody who's not familiar with the Fantastic Four. You got four core members, as the name implies. You got Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, the leader. He's super smart, smartest guy on the planet, basically. Can stretch his body to all sorts of crazy proportions and shapes. You got Sue Storm, or Sue Richards, the Invisible Woman. She can turn invisible, create invisible force fields with her mind. You got her brother, Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. Can light himself on fire and fly and control fire. And then you have Ben Grimm, the Thing. He was turned to rock, and he's super strong, and yeah, he got the short end of the stick when they were picking names. But anyway, let's talk about this series specifically. So the premise here, without going into too much spoilers, Reed Richards builds a machine that allows him to analyze alternate timelines, alternate universes, to find solutions to current problems. Kind of like if you've watched Infinity War, that scene where Doctor Strange is like analyzing different timelines and stuff to figure out how to defeat Thanos. That's basically kind of the idea here that Reed Richards does, with the goal being he wants to solve everything. I'm not kidding. That's not an exaggeration. That is his goal. He wants to solve everything. And through building this machine, I think it's called the Bridge, he actually ends up discovering what's called the Council of Reeds, which is a group comprised of other Reed Richards from alternate universes that had the exact same idea to solve everything. And they met up, they decided to work together towards that goal, which was kind of interesting. It was like almost a case study on arrogance, because the catch is that these other Reeds all had to give up their original lives and devote their entire being to this Council of Reeds. So it's kind of like the mind versus the heart. Which one do you follow? Yeah, there you see the Council of Reeds. You have like an older Reed. Some of them have infinity gauntlets. Just different versions of Reed Richards, basically. And this is kind of what it occurred to me around this point, that it's not so much the Fantastic Four that I had an issue with. It's mainly just that I don't like Reed Richards. A lot of the time, to me, he just comes across as like an arrogant douche. He's like, views himself as the smartest guy all the time, but, only trusts himself, wants to solve everything by himself. I don't know. I don't like arrogant people in real life, so by extension, I don't really like him a lot of the time. But anyway, I digress. So as you can imagine, this series is very heavy on time travel, alternate dimensions, alternate universes, that kind of stuff. So if that's not your cup of tea, by God, stay away from this, because that is a big part of the story. And it's a story that requires a good amount of your attention, or else you may wind up confused. It's kind of like if you step away from this story for a long time and then come back, you might be a little bit lost. Just because of all the stuff with different timelines and far future, near future, past, all this kind of stuff. But anyway, when you mess with the natural order of things to that extent that Reed does, naturally you're going to attract the attention of some significant otherworldly forces, let's put it that way. What ends up happening is an older Franklin Richards, who, I forgot to mention, Reed and Sue have children. You have Franklin Richards, who's like super young, but he's already like an Omega level, super powerful mutant. And you have Valeria, who is only 3 years old, but she's already smarter than her father, Reed Richards. So anyway, an older Franklin Richards comes from the future to provide a warning of a looming threat. And that kind of kicks everything off. From there, it feels like this story goes everywhere, because it actually gets surprisingly violent at times. But yeah, we go to Atlantis, to the negative zone, wars in outer space. But that's the core of the Fantastic Four. I didn't mean to rhyme there. But yeah, they're Marvel's cosmic team. They always go on sci-fi adventures, and that's kind of what their stories are all about. Tons of appearances from other characters like Doctor Doom and Galactus, and I quite like both of those. Actually, the way they portray Doctor Doom in this run is actually quite intriguing. They treat him a bit differently from what I'm typically used to seeing from him in other stories. But you also get characters like Annihilus, the Inhumans, who I really don't like. For whatever reason, I can just never click with the Inhumans whenever they appear. They're basically like this race that like lives on the moon or whatever, and they all have kind of weird powers or whatever. But whenever they show up, yeah, I found that to be a bit of a slog. But anyway, the thing tying the entire story together here really is Vin Diesel. I mean family. And you really feel that, whether it's Johnny and Ben, or Reed and Ben, or Reed and Sue, or Reed and Sue's children. The heart of this entire story just comes from the relationship between these characters. And I haven't read much Fantastic Four, but I get the sense that that's kind of true for most of their other runs as well. But speaking of family, I gotta touch on one specific moment from this story, without giving spoilers as best as I can. There is a huge turning point that occurs in Volume 1 that really shakes up the whole team, and honestly the wider Marvel Universe. It's a very tragic thing that happens, but there's a sequence in here following that where there is no dialogue at all for like several pages, and it was so moving and impactful because you're seeing all these characters from the wider Marvel universe react to this thing that just happened, and the story relies only on the emotion of the art, and it's just so well done. I know I'm not doing it justice just by talking about it. It's just something you kind of have to experience, but I really enjoyed that. And shortly after that, there's another really heartwarming scene between Spider-Man and Franklin. It was one of those moments that just made me go, yup, that is Spider-Man through and through. I'm not gonna lie, it spurred a little bit of eye sweat. Though, to be honest, I think that's kind of where the whole series peaked. That specific point in this volume. And the one other thing I wanted to point out in this that you may have noticed as I was flipping through is that there are no covers. No issue covers. It's actually kind of split up into chapters like this with a title, and then it moves on from there. Kind of like this. There's no page numbers, no table of contents, and from what I understand, that's kind of the Hickman style. This is my first book by Jonathan Hickman that I've read, but apparently that's kind of his style. He doesn't like to break the immersion with issue covers or anything like that. He wants to kind of make the whole thing feel like one experience, like a movie almost. And what ends up happening is that they just put all the covers at the end, which I'll show you later. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I guess it's kind of cool. But also, like, when I'm reading comics, I do want to admire the covers as well as I'm reading through. So, I don't know. I'm mixed on it. As for the art, though, very, very strong in this volume. You're getting lots of different artists, but I think my favorite artist in this volume was probably Steve Epting. I'm a big fan of his sort of realistic style. But in general, the art here is really, really strong. And real quick, we can flip through a little bit of Volume 2 as well. So Volume 1 ends on quite the cliffhanger. So that's another reason why I'm reviewing both of these Omnis at the same time. They really are one package. It's really one complete story all the way through for the most part. But yeah, as I mentioned, that big kind of tragic event from Volume 1 really shakes up the team. And Spidey actually joins for a bit. They get these new black and white suits. And I gotta be honest, I'm very biased. The bits with Spider-Man certainly carried a lot of this series for me. But yeah, that Spider-Man joins the team, the Fantastic Four, and this kickstarts the Future Foundation era, as it's called, where basically the team is raising a new generation of youngsters to solve the world's problems. For example, there's this really cool bit where they look at Ben Grimm's condition and they try to brainstorm ways that they can, make him human perhaps, because he's stuck as like this, rock creature. And the way they go with that is very interesting. I won't spoil it, but are they able to turn him back human, or do they find some other way? I don't know. You'll have to read to find that out. But basically the idea with Volume 2, Volume 1 for the most part is a lot of setup, and Volume 2 is like the big sort of culmination point, the event portion of this series. So we'll just say the heroes have to team up to defeat a pretty overwhelming force. That's all I'll say for the main story. The rest of Volume 2 is kind of like short little mini stories here and there, epilogues, and then just little short stories. There's like this clever alien mission sort of thing. Very Osmosis Jones issue that I quite enjoyed. There's a bit in Wakanda that I found really cool, like Reed interacts with T'Challa, the Black Panther, that I found pretty cool. But in general, Volume 2 kind of fizzled out for me as it went on. You can see there's more stuff here with the Inhumans, and like I said, anytime the Inhumans are playing a big role, I just kind of start to lose interest for whatever reason, but I don't know, I just don't find them compelling. So overall, Volume 2 I don't think is quite as strong as Volume 1. The art in general is less consistent. When it's strong, it's really, really strong. But there are some like really cartoony moments with the art, like this kind of style here I'm not the biggest fan of. Whenever it switched to that more sort of cartoony style, it kind of took me out of the story. So now we can take a quick look at the extras, starting with Volume 1. So as I mentioned, you know, there are no covers, issue covers during the main story. They're all kind of chucked at the end. So we won't go through all of them, but these are all the covers from the issues that were part of this omnibus. Pretty cool, but you also get, aside from these covers, you also get variants, which we always love to see. We always love to admire those, but I believe you also get scripts and stuff. Like, yeah, here's some scripts from one of the issues. Very cool. I can show you Volume 2 as well. Here we are with Volume 2, and like I said, same kind of idea. This is where you find all of the covers. There's a cool one by John Romita Jr. From the main series, like I said, you also get the variants. Pretty similar extras, some original art. No scripts in this one, I think. Mostly just art-based extras, but there you go. As for build quality, here we have Volume 1 clocking in at 800 pages with a pretty good-sized eye. I did hear scary things about the build of this book because it's printed at the iMac printer from Turkey, which is notorious for very thin pages. And yeah, these pages are pretty thin. I don't know if you can tell, but some of the art here from the other side is bleeding through. So when color bleed does happen, it's pretty bad. It didn't happen that often. There is a little bit of gutter loss, not a crazy amount. But yeah, here we go. Yeah, the gutter loss isn't too bad in Volume 1. But as you can see, we're seeing a lot of art from the opposite side of the page. And as for Volume 2, we have 832 pages. The eye is all right looking, but you can see my copy, the headband, is a little bit misaligned there. Not a huge deal, but I thought I'd point it out. I know some people care about that. It didn't really affect the experience for me. So the eye looks okay, but I did find that Volume 2, in general, had more gutter loss. The pages were a little bit thicker because I believe this one's printed at the Donnelly printer in China. But let me see if I can find an example of what I'm talking about here. Yeah, so here's an example of a spread page from Volume 2. And you can kind of see what I'm talking about because when I first got to this page, I was like, wow, that's a cool spread page, but where the heck is Spider-Man? I can't see him. Turns out poor Spidey was buried in the gutter and I didn't even notice until I stretched open the book a little bit. Even if I forcibly stretch it open, you can still see it's not perfect. We're still losing a decent amount. And if I just kind of let it lay on its own here, it just kind of looks a bit ridiculous. So there is more gutter loss. Moments like this every now and then will probably bother you. It kind of irked me a little bit. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. But our double feature is quickly coming to a close, so let me just wrap up with some closing thoughts here. I'll be honest, I struggled with a long time trying to sort out my opinion on this book because overall, I'll say I had a good enough time with this. It definitely wasn't bad by any means, but it didn't blow me away the way its reputation might have led me to believe that it would. Especially in Volume 2, it started to fizzle out, and I started to like question myself. I'm like, am I not reading this correctly? Am I missing something? But I think here's what it boils down to. I think if you're already a huge Fantastic Four fan, then I can totally see why you would enjoy a book like this, because each of the four members are really developed quite well and given their own time to shine. The kids are written really well too. Usually that's difficult for writers to do, writing children, but Franklin and Valeria are written very well here. But if you're like me, and you don't really particularly care for the Fantastic Four in general, then it's tough to say. You may strike gold here and discover a new love for the Fantastic Four, or you might be more like me and find that, yeah, it's good overall, but it doesn't really spur me to want to read more Fantastic Four. What it did do, though, is it did show me that Hickman really is a talented writer, which makes me look forward to reading his run on the Avengers, which continues on from this story. And I don't know. I'm hoping the Avengers I'll be more into that because there are more characters there that I like. But I'd say if you're curious about this series even a little bit, I still think it's worth a try to form your own opinion on it. If nothing else than just for those touching sequences from Volume 1 that I mentioned. Those were so good. But, you know, don't let the hype drive you. Read it, form your own opinion, and, you know, you get to feel however you want to feel. But that's been my review of the Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman Omnibuses Volumes 1 and 2. If you're more of a fan of this series, if like you really love it, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. You know, maybe I missed something. Tell me a bit about why you love it so much. I'd be curious to hear the different perspectives. But thank you guys so much for checking out another video. I hope to catch you in another one real soon. So, you have yourself a great day. I've been Superfly Comics Guy, and until next time, you keep reading. Bye, guys.